Wake up your morning in a brand new way with the positive people, places, events, and things in and around your neighborhood and around the world. No matter where you live, your mornings are about to get better. It's the refreshing way to start your day. No doom or gloom, just bright sunshine no matter what the weather. Metro Magazine with Bonnie McDaniel. Inspiring, informative, intelligent, Ion. Positively the best way to start your morning.
We had a huge family. We get an email from the sister of the cousin that I donated the kidney to, just saying that he had been taking an over-the-counter product, a fat burner, and it sent him into complete renal failure. He was young, healthy, athlete, wow, married with 3 small children, and the email said, and I'm paraphrasing, it was really brief, Brian is now on dialysis. He just got put on the donor list nationally. However, another option is if a family member is a match, then he doesn't have to wait for a kidney. And I read it kind of like tongue in cheek and responded. I just hit reply and I put, who knows, maybe I'm the chosen one. Tested. And maybe 3-4 weeks later, I'm on site, a production site, working in Atlanta, and I get a phone call from the donor team at the University of Miami. They said, we got your application and your information from your cousin Brian, and we just want to do a quick interview. The interview lasted about an hour. They were asking me all these questions, and they're like, okay, we're satisfied. You can go to the next step, and we're going to start sending you these tests. You send it back to us. And by the time I went through the 3rd test, they kept calling me back. Oh, that was great. You know, you passed that with flying colors. Now we want you to come down to Miami for a 1-day workup.
So were you serious when you did it?
Okay, no, I wasn't. That's what I was getting ready to get to. Because when they called me for the 1-day workup, I said, okay, God, can we push pause? Like, let's talk about this. I didn't mean it.
Be careful what you commit to.
I didn't mean it. I was just trying to encourage him, you know, and give him hope until, you know, just believing.
He wants my kidney. I don't know about that.
Just believing that, you know, a donor will come up on the list. I didn't really mean it. Can we talk about this? Like, what's going to happen if my daughter needs a kidney, or one of my siblings, or one of my parents? Like, I didn't mean it. And God said to me so clearly, he said, Vikki, I'm the same God.
Wow.
That touched you for him.
Wow.
And if you ever need anything,
it's,
I'm the same God.
Yeah.
I'm not moving. I'm in the same place. And that just gave me this supernatural peace. So I went forward, got down to Miami, did the 1-day workup, scheduled the surgery, went down for surgery, and so we had to do another tissue type match like the day before. And my cousin called me from his doctor's office. He said, hey, cuz, are you sitting down? My doctor wants to talk to you.
This is the one who's waiting for the kidney. Okay.
And I said, what's wrong? He said, oh, nothing. My doctor just wants to talk to you. So his surgeon gets on the phone, because we each have a team of doctors. And he says, I just want you to know we just finished the tissue type matching again prior to surgery, and you are the closest thing to an identical twin that he could have found.
So you're going to be giving away your body
pretty
part.
Much. Like, you are a 5 out of 6 genetic match.
Wow.
And at that moment, I just felt my grandmother's presence.
Like, had your grandmother passed at this?
She passed away almost 13 years ago. Okay. So this was like 4 years ago that I did the surgery. And I just felt her presence, like, you were born for this.
Wow.
You were born for this. Another defining moment. So that just overwhelmed me with peace. Went through the surgery. I was out of the hospital in 2 days.
You know, you're scaring me telling me the story, only because years ago, I put my name on a donor for bone marrow. And I guess once a year I get a letter in the mail from them, and I'm always afraid to open the letter because I'm like, oh Lord, they're going to be asking for my marrow this year. And so I'm listening to you and thinking, oh God.
It changed me.
Yeah,
it was an awesome experience. Donors are treated like royalty.
Yeah, yeah.
The respect that you get, especially from the medical community, it was just amazing. And I want to just insert here that we had another cousin who was a member at a church. This is around the same time that we're doing the surgery. It was the same time. And they were having this 30 days of purpose. And she went and shared with her pastor what we were doing, Brian and I, her two cousins. And I just happened to ask about a young lady there who I knew was on dialysis. And this is like a 10,000 member church. And I said, you know, it's no reason why she can't find a donor in a church that large. So our other cousin goes and says to the pastor, you know, what the two of us are doing. During this 30 days of purpose, he calls forward, like just like a Thursday night, he calls forward. He says, anybody in here on dialysis or in need of a kidney, come up front. And about 13 members came up front.
Wow.
And he says, now I've met very quickly with members of our congregation who are in, you know, the medical profession, specifically who work at the University of Miami Hospital. And this is what we want to do. We want to do a donor drive, like right here, right now. If you're willing to get tested as a donor, we want you to stand up and come up front. And like 200 people came up. And out of that 12, maybe 4 of them found matches.
Oh my God. That's
so
crazy.
It was like so much bigger than me. I was like, okay, I was born for this.
The woman who said she would donate the kidney, hoping she never would.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So that was a blessing. And after that, it just changed me, Bonnie. Waking up and looking at lights much like this in the recovery room, I just knew I was a different person.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
how long was the recovery period?
For me, completely to feel like myself again, about a year.
Okay.
But I felt better. Like, I went back to visit him. He stayed in the hospital another week or 2. I went back to visit him 3 days later, and they didn't recognize me. Like, of course, I had on makeup, and, you know, they didn't recognize me as the same person walking in. They're like, did you? That was me. Yes. So my recovery was great. I didn't have any complications whatsoever.
How is he doing now?
He is doing amazing. Back at work, thriving,
and what
grateful.
A gift to be able to
He did call me afterwards. He said, this is maybe 6 months later. He said, did you cry at movies? I said, no. He said, because I think this girl kidney you gave me has me being emotional. Like,
he's getting made it a gender.
No, I cry. I'm crying at movies. I'm all sensitive. I was like,
he got those hormones. That's
he was like, that's the only thing, Vikki. Like, I'm just more emotional. I was like, how about you're healthy enough to be emotional?
I love it. I love it.
And so we just kind of tease each other about that. But it was life-changing for me.
Yeah.
Now I wake up every day like, God, how are you going to wow me today?
Yeah.
What can I do today? Because for me at this juncture of my life, you know, every day is a bonus.
Yeah. And you know what? And we're going to take a quick break because I want to come back and talk about the amazing work that you're doing. You're doing a lot of great things.
Thank you.
And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Metro Magazine and Vikki Kennedy Johnson.
Really? Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, Smokey.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
And we're back with more Metro Magazine and Vikki Kennedy Johnson. We are having quite a conversation this morning. I hope you've been listening throughout the entire interview. But when we went to break, you were talking about, we were beginning to talk about some of the work that you're doing right now. And there's one program that am aware of. It's called Wrap It Up. Talk
Yes.
to us about Wrap It Up and why this is so powerful. As a matter of fact, if you would give us a little background as to how you came about doing this.
Oh, wow. Okay. Quick story. So I love the work. That's my baby. Wrap It Up literally was a notebook when I got it. And it was handed to me during a very pivotal time, a crossroads is the word, at BET. Quite a few of my coworkers had just been laid off. It was the first huge shift at BET. And our department was reorganized, people were restructured, and I was handed this notebook and said, this is your new job. This was 13 years ago. And I opened it up and I said, RIU, what is that? And they said, that's our new HIV/AIDS campaign, and you're going to create it. And I was immediately overwhelmed because I knew nothing about HIV and AIDS except that people who received that diagnosis, they died very quickly. So it was a daunting assignment, if you will. And so for about 2 weeks, I came to work and just sat at my desk like numb, couldn't move, and had an experience where I'll say, where I felt like God said to me, just show up and make yourself available, and I will show you what to do.
That's a good lesson for everybody to know about life. It's showing up. That's 99.9% of doing it.
It was showing up.
Okay.
And he said, just show up and make yourself available, and I am going to do the work through you. That was a weekend. That Monday, I got a call from the National Black Leadership Coalition on AIDS in New York City inviting me to come to Atlanta because they were having this think tank of African American leaders around the conversation of HIV/AIDS, all expenses paid. And so I was like, but God, I don't know anything. He said, just take your business cards and smile.
Wow.
Because everybody wants to work with BET.
Okay.
So when I got there, sure enough, people were coming up to me, oh, we would love to work with BET. Can we partner with BET? We feel like that would be a huge vehicle for us to get the message out and do the work. And that was the beginning of what is now a 13-year journey. I oversee the day-to-day management of the campaign, whether I developed a curriculum that health educators could use to teach in secondary schools. We do anonymous and confidential testing with health departments all around the country. We've created on-air programming, off-channel marketing materials, and then we go to high schools and colleges doing these team forum slash town hall type meetings. And it's very rewarding to be able to give voice to people who are living with the virus and to also empower people who may have been affected by a family member's diagnosis. And, you know, our campaign received the only Emmy Award that BET has ever received.
Wow.
In its almost 30-year history. So we're the little engine that could. It's just 3 of us.
And you just showed up.
Just showed up. Just showed up like, okay.
You know,
but, you know, going back to that little girl, something bigger than me.
Right.
That champion in me that was nurtured in high school and college. That is what I constantly go back to. That's the center. That's the core.
Yeah.
That's that God. Like, just release me. Just show up.
Yeah.
And when you keep putting one foot in front of the other, he just continues to amaze me. So I'm very proud of the work that we get to do, you know, and then the network taking a lot of flack about programming over the years. This to me is our do good and our give back to the almost 96 million viewers that we have. I'm just empowering people who are dealing with this and others. We do breast cancer, we do work with veterans. And it's just an awesome, I call it an opportunity. I love what I get to do every day and get paid for it.
Now let me ask you, the Wrap It Up program, and I want to talk about that a little bit more, especially
Sure.
for people who are not familiar with it, although I doubt if there are very few people, at least in the United States, who are not aware. Are there programs throughout the year? And secondly, is this just an African American program? Talk a little bit more specific about who is it
It is
open
geared
to?
toward people of color because people of color are disproportionately
And that's what I want you to
impacted
talk
and
about.
affected by HIV and AIDS. The numbers, unfortunately, remain the same because it's a new generation. There's a lot of stigma attached to HIV and AIDS. And so our mission is to empower and educate and give as much information and to show that people who are living with this virus or who are impacted by it are just like you and I. And people are living longer. People are living healthier with more information. So it is directed to people of color because our community is, again, disproportionately affected by it. It used to be 1 in 50 women. Now it's like 1 in 18.
Wow.
And that is what drives me, you know, to really reach as many as I can with as much information as I can and to remove the stigma from around and to take away some of that fear, because it used to be a very fearful conversation that
I know
people were
I've
having.
known a few people who, the very first time I knew someone who was affected, and very shortly thereafter, he was a Latino gentleman who worked when I was in corporate America. Just a wonderful person, human being. And one day I heard he was sick, that he had AIDS, and I swear within 3 months he was gone.
Yeah.
And that to me was just, it really did, it let me know how serious of a disease it was. And then there were other people within his community who were also, in a very short period of time, they were gone. It is a devastating disease, and I just really applaud the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And you know you have my support.
Yes, thank you.
Because our children, you know, a lot of people will tend to think, oh, it's that person over there. And until it comes home, you don't really understand why this work
and
is so
it often
important.
comes home unexpectedly.
Yeah.
A lot of heterosexual women are impacted by this, and it's not just promiscuous women. It's women who were virgins until they got married and unknowingly married a man who was infected. I know several women whose husbands knew that he had the virus and married them anyway,
And didn't tell.
and did not tell them. So it's not always irresponsible behavior that puts people in this situation. I know people who are born with it because the mother to child transmission of the virus. Some people get it through blood transfusions. Well, earlier on, a lot of people were infected that way. So it can happen to anyone.
Exactly.
And that, again, is the imperative of the message that BET has committed to keeping out in the community among our viewers.
Now, what are some of the, talking about that, are there some things that, and maybe I'll leave this to the end, but put a little sticky note there. I want to have you to share with our viewers things that they might be able to do to help you with that effort. But I want to first of all talk about some of the other work you're doing, because we were talking about women and them not being as supportive as we should be toward one another. And I know that there is something that you're doing to really help those pretty women, not to be pretty on the outside, but to be pretty on the inside. You have something called Girl
Talk Unplugged.
Talk about that.
Started Girl Talk actually 13 years ago as a quarterly gathering of women. It was an outgrowth of a daily radio feature that I did called I'm Every Woman, which was a 60-second, a 1-minute empowerment moment. And from that, we started doing these quarterly gatherings called Girl Talk, where anywhere from 500 to 800 women would come together, and it would be intimate, informal, and unscripted. We would just talk about whatever was going on at that moment. And from that, I was able to write and release 3 books. Just released my 4th book earlier this year called Vikki Isms. And when my daughter went to high school, I kind of pushed pause on Girl Talk, just so that I could be available as a single mom. I wanted to be available to be that parent that showed up, you know, who was actively involved. And so when she went to college, I wanted to identify what was next and added Unplugged to to Girl Talk because after 10, 11 years, a lot of people had started doing Girl Talk. And just kind of knowing what I know about branding and ownership of intellectual property, I just added unplugged. To brand it as mine, and but also to be descriptive in the experience and the community I wanted to create for women. We were taking it to a place where there were no limits. Unplugged is indicative of we're going everywhere, inside and then coming out to address those places that are uncomfortable to talk about, to, you know, tap into those wounded little girls that often are inside each woman, and to just kind of hold her hand and walk her through what healing looks like, what it feels like, that uncomfortable place, to let her know, look, you're not alone.
Right. And I think very often women don't, number one, don't know that there's someone that they can go to, and number two, they're afraid to really extend themselves or to be vulnerable, if you will, to another woman about things that are real important to her. And I just, again, I applaud you for doing that, because, you know, there's we are of a kindred spirit when it comes to that, because we both are very actively involved in doing what we can to support and benefit the cause of women. Now, you are, in addition to that, you're also a minister, and I know every time I look around, you're going someplace wonderful. I'm like, okay, can I like be in her luggage? Because you're going to a lot of very exciting places and speaking to different women's forums. So talk about your ministry, if you will, and what are you trying to accomplish or hope to accomplish with that?
My platform is absolutely empowering women and provoking women to be authentic.
I love provoking.
Yeah, I'm very provoking. It's like another person comes out.
Okay, I need to go and provoke somebody like right now.
But on the platform, when I'm able to speak, it really is something else comes upon me, because I don't see myself as my sister's keeper. I see myself as my sister. And so I'm talking to the woman I used to be.
Right.
And so because of that, because I've walked that walk, that journey, I can do it without fear. I can do it fearlessly. And I can say, you know, I know you're out there. I know what you're feeling. I've been there, done that. I've walked that path. So I'm here to say, look at me. Look at me. I am evidence of what's possible for you.
And you know, I think it's really hard for women, especially, to do that, especially when you've been hurt and you've had some moments.
I've had some moments.
But the fact that you are able to get on the other side of those moments and say, you know what, been there, done that, I ain't doing it again.
Right.
The pain may come, but it's going to come in a different way. The fact that you're able to do that and you're willing to expose yourself so that you can help other women is a testament to the amazing woman that you are.
Thank you.
Before we go off the air, if you could just take a moment and let people know how can they get in touch with Vikki Kennedy Johnson, because I think after this interview there are going to be quite a few. So if you would just look into that camera and let them know. Thank
you. Thank you for the opportunity. I am out there. You can find me. I'm on Facebook at Elder Vikki Johnson. That's Vikki. I am on Twitter at Elder Vikki. And my website is gtugetaway.com. You can also get my books on Amazon.com. And I would just love to engage you in terms of the sisterhood. I do have a community on Facebook called Girl Talk Unplugged, a Sacred Sisterhood. Would love to have you join over 2,000 women who just interact on a daily basis, empowering each other.
Well, I think that said it all. And we are out of time, and I would like to thank those of you who are tuned in this morning. I'd like to thank you very much for tuning in and for sharing this amazing woman with us. And if you are an amazing woman, or you have a story, or know someone who is, we would love to hear from you. You can find us on BonnieMetroMag.com and just send me a note, and I will be certain to reach out to you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on the flip side. Bye-bye. Queen Bee is a book about some of the habits, some of the things that we women do really to undermine ourselves and undermine other women. And it's something that we really can't afford to do any longer. It's actually a book that is a combination of research that I've done, interviewing other women and men about what is it that has kept us over the years from becoming the empowered women that we say we are. I have taken interviews from women who talk about some of the experiences they've had in working with other women, either in the capacity of just having relationships in different types of settings, whether it be in the corporate boardroom or a lot of the women that I talk to are entrepreneurs, but really just delving into not just the things that we do in terms of day-to-day, to perform our jobs, but really looking at the things that are really holding us back. One of the things that's interesting to me is the fact that if you take a woman, an average woman, and if you're honest, and put her in a room with 15, 20 other women and have a gorgeous woman walk in the room, watch the reaction. Chances are very good she's not going to like her, and it has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that she, in their own minds, looks a certain way. If you take that and reverse it, and you are the woman who thinks that everything about yourself is intact, you're going to respond to that woman in a different way. And you're going to listen to her rather than look at her physical being. And that's what I want women to do. I want us to stop looking at what we have on, whether or not, we're thinner or heavier than the next woman, but really to look at who we are as women. Good morning and welcome to Metro Magazine. We are talking to someone this morning who is absolutely revolutionizing the construction industry, not just here in the United States, but all over the world. And before we get to that, let's welcome Tiffany Hosey Brown to Metro Magazine. Tiffany, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And I'll tell you, I have, if someone's just looking at you, first of all, you're very petite and the way you look sitting here, it's hard to imagine you donning a hard hat. What is that about? And we're going to go back and if you could give us a little history on how did you get involved in that? Because there's a lot more to Tiffany than just the hard hat.
Sure. I was a corporate trial attorney for 15 years. And family came up with this brilliant idea to start a construction company back in 2007.
Okay.
We got our first project in 2008, and I was president of the company, and I was working full-time on the construction job. And so our first job was rebuilding a levee down in Louisiana. And I must have taken about 12 trips down there, and obviously I didn't have a background in construction, so I was really curious about the process. Then we got a job in Virginia to oversee the installation of doors, frames, and hardware. And it was for a 2 million square foot federal government building. And I saw it as an opportunity to actually be on the ground, to watch a construction project from start to finish. So that's when I grabbed the hard hat and the orange vest and the steel toe boots and the safety glasses and went to the construction site every day for a couple of years.
Okay. Now, let's go back to Louisiana, because there's something significant there, because your project really was, if I understand, a helping of the rebuild as a result of what happened with Katrina. Talk about that a little bit.
Actually, it wasn't related to Katrina. It was post-Katrina, and it was a different area.
Okay.
But it was important because of Katrina, and they wanted to ensure that the levees would hold and that they were much stronger.
Okay.
So our levee was so well built that it was used as a model for other people who were rebuilding levees and doing repairs around Louisiana, that the state levee board would bring people to our site and show it to them and say, this is what we want it to look like. So it was successful in that regard.
Now, we've talked about what you do now, and I wanted people to get a sense of the work that you have done in terms of construction. But I want to go back, because you're from Mississippi. Tell me, what was it like growing up in Mississippi?
It was Mississippi. I mean, I went to Catholic schools my whole life.
Okay.
Went to public schools a couple of years. I was born right after segregation. Okay. So,
what was that like? Because it's interesting. I was talking to another amazing woman, I guess a couple of segments or series back, and she mentioned the fact she was Arab and she lived in Mississippi, and I thought that was very interesting. And I mentioned to her that Mississippi is one of the only 2 states that I've not visited in the United States, which is interesting. And I think I have this image of what Mississippi, because of our history.
You probably have the image of Mississippi outside of the capital city.
Of course,
right?
You're from Jackson, but still, that image is there. So
yeah.
Talk about, because you were post-segregation, talk about what it was like for you as an African-American child growing up in Mississippi.
So it was great.
Okay.
Because I was from a quote-unquote upper middle class family. My grandfather was a very prominent businessman in Mississippi in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. He had he owned one of only 2 hotels in Jackson where blacks could stay when they came to visit. And there is a lounge down in the basement of the hotel called the Subway Lounge. That there was actually a documentary on Showtime called Home of the Mississippi Jukes, that I believe Morgan Freeman did the voiceover. He's from Mississippi. And they told the story of my grandfather's lounge. And basically there were a lot of musicians like Ella Fitzgerald and yeah, I can't remember all the people, but it was a lot of the luminaries.
So did you have an opportunity to see some
I didn't see them.
Oh,
I didn't see them because I was too young. I probably wasn't even born when it was that popular. But a lot of the soldiers, when they came to Mississippi, the only place they could stay was at his hotel or one other place. So my grandfather's stature brought with it a lot of opportunities for us to do a lot of things that I'm sure a lot of other people in Mississippi didn't get to do, and Jackson didn't get to do at the time. The one thing I will tell you that's really kind of funny and ironic is I went to law school intending to be a lawyer, and I ended up in construction, and I didn't understand how in the world did this happen, because when I went to school it wasn't a dream of mine to be on a construction site. So one day, about maybe in 2010, I asked my mom, how did my grandfather make his money? And she said he was flipping houses. He would buy old houses, refurbish them, and sell them. And that's how he got started. So it's almost like a full circle.
Yeah. Now, you talk about your grandfather. I know also that your father is a great influence in your life. Talk about your relationship with him when you were growing up and how he impacted or influenced some of the professional decisions you've made.
My dad's my best friend.
Growing
up, he was my hero. He still is. He is my biggest cheerleader from watching my basketball games in 4th grade and 3rd grade.
So you were a basketball player?
Basketball player. Tennis in high school. And then going on to law school, he was cheering for me then, even though I think he really wanted me to get a PhD and be a professor so that I could have summers off. He said, that's the best life, you have summers off. And then now that I'm doing this business, he's the biggest support system that I have. I mean, not only financially, but just emotionally, you know, in terms of, you know, keeping me up when I get knocked down and helping me persevere. And I get a lot of my tenacity from him.
Okay. Now, you talked about the fact that your grandfather had been, he made his money by flipping houses. And then he owned a hotel. What business was your father in? My
dad was an accountant. He was the head accountant at Jackson State University, which is one of the historically black universities in the United States. And he went from there and started his own businesses. He had a convenience store and a liquor store in Jackson, down the street from our house, for about 30 years. And that put me through school. And gave us a lot of opportunities, and he did a great job with that. What were
there must have been some nuggets, if you will, that your dad gave you when you were growing up, things that he said to you, that he taught you, that have proven to be very useful as an adult for you. So talk about some of the things, some of the wisdom that he imparted.
His famous line is, always remember debits and credits. Debits and credits, Tiffany. He's an accountant.
So know how to count that money
exactly.
before you make it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dot your I's and cross your T's. It's been drilled in my head. And integrity. He said, you know, integrity is everything. And he said you can have a lot of money, but you can't buy peace of mind.
Exactly.
So to the extent that you can be happy with what you do in life and look yourself in the mirror and say and know that you're a good person making decisions that are good for you and for your family, and that the things that you do don't have a negative impact on other people intentionally, then you're good.
Okay, okay. Now, when you said you went to school in Mississippi, the decision to, because I know you went to Georgetown University, you did your undergraduate studies there. What made you decide to come further north and not stay in the South? Well,
I always had cabin fever in Mississippi. It was just, it wasn't enough for me to do there. It was, I always said, I love the state of Mississippi, but I always found it a little boring. It wasn't enough to do. And I'm a sports fanatic.
Okay.
And I fell in love with the Georgetown basketball team.
Okay.
I believe Patrick Ewing was playing at the time.
The guys with the cute legs.
Well, I wasn't really paying attention to that, but I was a sports fanatic. I mean,
Sure.
I would watch football with my brother and my dad and on Sundays. And so when I got an opportunity to go to Georgetown over the summer, when I was in high school, I fell in love with the campus. And then I always said, oh, okay, I want to study Japanese. And they had the School of Languages and Linguistics. So I studied there, or I had an intention of going there to study. And when I saw the campus, I fell in love. This is a perfect place. So that's why I went there.
And then you went on, you made the decision while you were in your undergraduate, you made the decision to go ahead and get your law degree from George Washington, correct?
Yeah, actually I decided I wanted to get a law degree when I was a senior in high school.
Okay.
Those
a woman on a mission.
Those were on the LA Law days, so I was watching LA Law on television. I was like, I could do that. That looks fun. I like to argue.
Okay.
You know, so I, when I had my interviews for Georgetown, I actually told them that was my intention, was to go to law school.
Okay.
And so I got into GW, and they'd you know, it was a good fit for me at the time, and I wanted to stay in the area. So I went ahead and went there.
Okay, okay. And I also noticed in looking at your background that you studied abroad. You went to Japan.
I did.
And you mentioned earlier that you had studied Japanese for, what, 3 years?
4 years.
4 years.
Every day.
And you speak Japanese fluently, which I am very impressed by that, my dear.
Sure. Not anymore. Not as fluent as I was, but I can get by.
Talk about that experience.
So
and how long were you there?
I was there almost a year, and I lived with a family who was awesome. I mean, I woke up to the smell of fresh baked bread every morning. And the mom was an excellent cook. And the father loved to sing country music. And
wait a minute, stop right there. You have this is a Japanese family.
Yes.
He loves country music. Okay.
Yes, yes. And had a band. So it was fabulous.
Okay.
And I just had a really good time. I ate a lot and never gained an ounce because I ate a lot of sushi, and so I was putting weight on it. And I got to see Mount Fuji, which was one of the most awe-inspiring things I'd ever seen. I actually saw it up close in Yokohama on a black sand beach. And I had ran into Wynton Marsalis, of all people, in a park in Japan. And a group of us, a group of students I was studying with, we were invited to ride with them to Yokohama for a concert. So I got a chance to sort of debate Faulkner in the back of a bus with Wynton Marsalis, and then go into a black sand beach in Yokohama and look at Mount Fuji. So it was awesome.
Now, there are a lot of young women who are going to be watching this, which is why we're doing this Amazing Women series. Talk about why studying abroad is so important.
Wow. I can't even begin to tell you how that experience opened up my mind to their differences in culture, their differences in language, their differences in environment. But the bottom line is people are people, and families are families, and we, you know, everybody loves everyone the same. And that's a one common thread that we share with the world. And to the extent that you can tap into that when you know, the humanity of everyone, I think it really allows you to reach out and create friendships beyond the geographic borders that you were born inside. You know, you can really establish some authentic relationships with people.
Okay, and this is a real good segue. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how Tiffany's past has really come full circle to the work that she's doing right now, and I'm real excited to share with you. So we'll be right back in a moment.
Up to 40% of businesses never recover after experiencing a major disaster. Make a plan at ready.gov/business.
And we're back. We're talking to Tiffany Hosey Brown, who is the founder of Build Data Analytics. And when we went to break, we were talking about your educational background and your study abroad. And that's pretty significant, because what's interesting about this story is how you've kind of come full circle in terms of the work that you're doing that we're going to talk about in a moment. So you were talking about the fact that you studied abroad, and also sharing with our viewers how important it is for young people, especially young women, I think, to have that experience. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Well, I'll just add, my daughter is 8 years old, and she's been taking French for about 4 or 5 years now. And just watching her mind just develop and blossom when we are out and she hears someone else speaking French, and she's able to understand what they're saying, it's just really special. And I think it's important because it gives her a sense of confidence that she can do things that, if she puts her mind to it, that other people haven't done, that she can achieve whatever she wants to do in life. And I think that's really key to having that exposure to global things.
Now let's come and let's talk about Tiffany Hosey Brown today, because you just won a major award, kind of like a Shark Tank. Talk to us about what just recently happened with your new company.
So I was in a the Boston Business Improvement District, Boston BID, Launchpad Challenge. And I believe there were about 250 or 240 or so companies that applied to be involved. And it was a business accelerator that started over the summer and culminated with a competition on December 4th at the movie theater at the Boston Mall. And they put on a big production. It was truly Shark Tank style. The judges were Congressman Gerald Connolly, Anish Chopra, who was the first Chief Technology Officer for the U.S. appointed by President Obama, Mark Gruen, who is an attorney at Saul Ewing and co-founder of Career Builders, an investor in careerbuilders.com, and the great Ted Leonsis. And that was such a treat to be able to, you know, pitch in front of those individuals.
What was that like? I mean, here you are again. I guess you're. Now that I think about it, the fact that you were an attorney probably prepared you for getting up and saying and doing whatever.
I thought it would, but actually it didn't. I think.
Why not?
In some ways it did and didn't. So when you prepare for trial or argument before a judge, you've had a lot of hours to prepare.
Okay.
The pitch competitions the pitches that I had done before this competition, I had maybe a week and a half to prepare. Okay. And so you're confined to a 4-minute time frame to do your presentation. And when you have something as complicated as construction that a lot of people just aren't familiar with the ins and outs of what's involved, it's really difficult to try to tell your story in 4 minutes. So in 4 minutes you see the clock ticking, and you're like, I got to get it out, and it's hard. But for the competition, before Mr. Leonsis and the Boston BID group, I had a little bit of time to practice, and I would go to bed and wake up at 4 every morning thinking about it, dreaming about it, and got this eerie calmness about the whole situation.
Right, right.
And when it was, so before you went on stage, there was a video that they had taped beforehand to sort of personalize you to the audience. And then they open the doors, announce your name, and you go out on the stage. There's about 400 people there, and I was just comfortable. And I gave my pitch. And I had so much support from people who offered to mentor me and give me some pointers on how to really do a good job at it. It really paid off because my comfort level was tremendous. And the part where the attorney part did pay off was during the question and answer.
Okay.
The questions they asked, it was very easy for me to give them answers.
Now, I read in something that was written where someone asked you whether or not you thought you were going to win, or did you think you were going to win, or something along those lines.
When did you know you were going to win?
When did you know you were going to win? And you said when he asked, what were you going to do with the money?
He did ask what was like, and he didn't ask anyone else that question, right?
Okay.
And so and that was on the heels of me explaining the business model and how we were making money.
Right.
So when he asked that question, I had answers for everything, but when he asked it, I looked at him and I said, well, what money are you talking about? And he said, oh, the money, the $2.5 million that you're seeking. So yeah, that was pretty surprising.
And I have to share with you, I was privy to learn about this idea, how many years ago? 2010. And when she shared with me what she was thinking about doing, I was like, wow, because I also came out of technology and I understood the impact that what you're going to share with our viewers is going to have on the construction industry, because we're not talking about donning a hard hat necessarily. We're talking about utilizing technology and a lot of the skills that you've learned over the years in order to change, revolutionize construction. So you have, and I got ahead of myself just a little bit, but you have now won the competition. And talk about what did you get for that?
$15,000 cash award, an office space for a year, office furniture, free legal advice, and continued mentorship.
Okay. Free legal advice for an attorney. I'd love that.
You know what they say about a lawyer, a doctor that operates on himself.
Right.
So
you definitely need legal advice.
Yeah.
No, I was just making a joke. But so let's talk about this product that you won the competition, and that you're going to, I believe, revolutionize the way people build things. Let's talk about that for a minute.
So when you were familiar with it back in 2010, it was just a product, but we've actually realized that we're more than just a software company. We're actually a business intelligence company for the commercial construction industry, and we're the first company to do business intelligence in commercial construction.
What does that mean when you talk about business intelligence?
That means what is the information that you can get from the process of constructing something. For example, there are a lot of opportunities to collect data on a construction site that no one's ever captured. So from the guys that put in the windows and the walls and the doors and the floors and the light fixtures, etc., there's information that is very valuable when you're over time trying to figure out, well, how much time does it really take? Instead of estimating it, you actually have a real concrete way of measuring time and understanding what were the best practices. Why did this building stay standing when there was a natural disaster and the building next door completely collapsed?
Now this, if I can interrupt you, this becomes very important, especially considering the natural disasters that we've had around the world in the past several years. So talk about the impact that this product or this business intelligence that you're speaking about is going to have on that.
Sure. So there's a real estate development group that is talking to us about using the software in some of the countries that are not as technologically developed as the United States. And some of the challenges that they face is having to, typically you have these huge blueprints, and if it's a job where the architectural plans are changing constantly, you constantly have to print these out to make sure everyone's working on the same page. Well, our system sort of replaces the blueprints because we are connected to the architectural software, and so everything that you need to build in a building, in a room in a building, appears in a template form for each one of the companies responsible for putting in a component of the structure, so the light fixtures, the walls, etc.
So this architectural software is it housed in a remote site, or how are they tapping in?
Well, it's wherever the architects are. I mean, the architects actually could be in the United States, and the building could happen in Dubai, and they can transmit the information electronically to our software, and they could pull it up because it's all web-based.
Okay.
It's not an off-the-shelf software platform. It's a web-based platform.
Okay, and that's what I wanted you to iterate for the people who are watching.
It's a web-based platform. So if you own a building in DC and you're taking a trip to California and you want to know how the construction activities are going, how much money has been earned by the contractors, you just log into your account every day and any time of day and find out exactly how much construction activities have been completed, how many materials have been received on site, how much money has been earned, and a lot of other things.
Now, have you been able to patent this?
We have patents pending maybe in 10 countries in the United States.
Okay. Excellent, excellent, yeah. And talk to me, because one of the things that occurred to me also, you were talking about being able to utilize this product in countries that are not as developed as the United States. Give an example of the impact that this will have on, say, some remote area in, say, Africa or where have you?
Well, one thing it does, it allows you to be able to capture the information of what went into building a structure. So if there is another natural disaster and there are a series of buildings that did use our CT-BIM system, some buildings that did not use CT-BIM, then hopefully the buildings that did use CT-BIM were constructed in such a way that they withstood the natural disasters or some components of it. And you can do a comparison of what materials were used, why did they be able to backtrack and understand why were they able to withhold or hold up better in the natural disaster, who were the contractors that built the building, who were the high performers, that kind of information. The longevity of assets, what assets can last in a storm versus not, or a natural disaster. That kind of information is quite valuable.
Okay, okay. Now, this series is on women. How many other women are working with you or in fields or doing projects or things similar to what you're doing? Are there many out there, or are you just kind of this little lone wolf out there?
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of women, actually.
Okay. And why do you think that is?
Well, there are a lot of things that have traditionally been dominated by men. And construction, you know, is one of those industries.
Okay.
Actually, the law is another industry that's, you know, been dominated by men for many years.
You have, because I know you mentioned, I read in an article that there are people in Dubai and other places around the world where men traditionally, even more so there than here in the United States, don't look at women as doing, you know, as being in these roles. How have they received you? Actually,
in the Middle East, the gentlemen that are very keen on introducing the software in that region said that I would be very surprised at how receptive they are to women, professional women.
Okay.
Now, I still was told, you know, you'll have to have a man escort you and drive you and all that. But in terms of meetings, they said I would be very surprised at how open they are to having and used to it, because there are some women that they are familiar with in technology that have risen up in the ranks and are very highly regarded. But in terms of the U.S., I haven't seen many women in construction particularly. And you know, it's interesting. I like being a trailblazer, I suppose, and I'm excited about the possibilities. I'll just add that as a result of the competition, I had a lot of women reach out to me and say, "You go, you know, we're so happy to see a woman on stage in a very untraditional space."
Now, young women who are watching this, what advice? Girls out there who imagine building things are improving, you know, the building of things. What advice would you give them? And even more importantly, because I'm thinking back, your grandfather, your father, you had these male influences in your life who I'm sure helped you to form the idea in your head that I can do whatever I set my mind to doing.
You know, it's interesting. My mom is the one who really impressed on me how no matter what, you can, if you put your mind to it, you can achieve whatever you want, because she actually went back to school at 40 and got a degree to be a podiatrist. And I know that wasn't easy for her as an adult to go back to school, because I certainly wouldn't go back to school at this age of But one thing that I tell my daughter is figure out what it is you like to do. What is it that you would do in the morning if you didn't have to go to school and you could just spend your days, your time doing it? What would you do if you had no care in the world? And then figure out, okay, so how can I make money doing this?
Yeah.
And that way you'll be happy and you'll never work.
I remember the day I said to my dad that I wanted to major in business administration, and he looked at me quizzically and he said, "Why would you do something like that?" And I said, "Because I want to be a businesswoman." Didn't know in what context, but I knew that. And that influence actually came from my grandfather, who was a businessman. He was not educated, but he basically took care of our family through farming. And I saw the impact that business, running your own show, could have on your family. And so that's where that influence came from. But I remembered the fact that if I look at what I'm doing now and look at what I did then, and nothing was lost, but a lot of the decisions I made were because I was afraid to venture outside of the box. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be talking to you today and have you share your story, because that's so important, the fact that you're instilling that in your daughter. And I've done the same with my own. The idea that you can get up and whatever brings you joy, do it, because you can absolutely figure out how to earn a living at it. And at the end of the day, it's the joy that makes the impact.
Absolutely.
Not that education isn't important. It is extremely important, but it's what brings you joy that makes the difference in the world. Wow, this has been such an exciting time for me, because I have known you for several years, and I can say that you have been quite an influence on even myself, just watching you, and even some of the counsel you have provided to me over time. And I'm honored that you're here, that you're sharing your story.
Thank you.
And
I'm honored to be here.
And I know that there are a lot of young women out there who are going to be impacted by what you've shared today. Now, there's an opportunity for you right now to look into that camera and talk about what it is that you're looking to do moving forward. So here's your opportunity to kind of do your push.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you. So I'm just looking for customers. You know, if you have complex construction projects and you want some higher level of accountability and transparency, and you want to save a guaranteed 1% of the total project costs, which is great.
Love it.
We'd love to hear from you, and I think we can make great things happen.
Okay, if you want to give your website.
Oh, our website is www.ctbim.com. C as in Charlie, T as in Tom, B as in Bob, I, M as in Mary.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
with us.
Thank you very much.
We're out of time, and you've been joining us this morning talking to Tiffany Hosey Brown. This is Bonnie McDaniel, and stay tuned for another amazing woman who will share her story next time here on Metro Magazine. You have a great day now.